Welcome everybody to the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center and the topical information from Colonel Lysenko, the spokesman for the
Defense Council Information Center spokesman with the update from Eastern Ukraine. Прошу, пан Андрію.
Доброго дня, шановні колеги.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. The situation on the territory of Luhansk and Donetsk regions remains complicated. The territories continue to violate the conditions of agreements on the ceasefire, and they continue to shell the positions of the forces of anti-terrorist operation. Besides, there's a growing of contradictions between different bands of terrorists, as a result of which they have combat clashes, including those with involvement of mortars and artillery. The most tense situation is in the vicinity of Donetsk airport and also cities Mariupol, Debaltseve, Shastya. During the 24 hours, numerous shellings from Grad batteries, mortars, and small arms were detected in the direction of the Donetsk airport and also Nikishin, Starognativka, Ritkodubs, and the armored machinery is relocated to Debaltseve by terrorists. Besides, the terrorists have fired several rounds from Grad and mortars in the direction of Avdiivka from Donetsk. Ukraine continues to cooperate with the mission of OSCE, and by the end of this week, the Luhansk and Donetsk branches of the mission will be reinforced with 25 new members. Also, the spokesman of the Foreign Ministry said that from Austria to Ukraine, very soon, first drones for the OSCE mission will arrive. Over the last 24 hours, Ukrainian military have sustained 5 wounded and no killed. Yesterday, under the chairwomanship of the advisor of President on humanitarian issues, Olga Bogomolets, they held a conference where they considered the issue of providing artificial limbs to those who suffered on Maidan and in the anti-terrorist operation zone. The Olga Bogomolets said that the state has everything in order to supply them with artificial limbs, and there is enough money and production capacities for this. The experts of Ukrobonoronprom enterprise have repaired 22 armored vehicles, including tanks, armored personnel carriers, and also artillery systems and auxiliary vehicles. This was happening in field conditions without taking the machinery from the zone of the anti-terrorist operation, so they have repaired the vehicles very soon and they came back to service. About the situation in the populated centers, yesterday after another shelling by terrorists, the electricity vanished in Donetsk in several districts, and the projectile hit the electricity line Smolyanko-Magistralna. They had to resort to a reserve system to the Central Clinical Hospital in Donetsk, the blood transfusion station, and they had to stop the work of running water in northern and central districts of Donetsk. Besides, the electrotransportation system was stopped, and over 4,000 customers remain without gas in Donetsk, including 14 residential block buildings and 29 enterprises. The continuing work goes on the improvement of the of the capacity of the water canal Siversky Donetsk Donbass, and because there are problems, then there's little water delivered to Donetsk, Makivka, Inakivka, Horlivka, Dzержинsk, and Kharkiv. Because of terrorist sections in Donetsk, there's a danger of complete stoppage of delivery of electricity to Luhansk, and at the moment the city gets only 20% from the necessary amount of electricity. The leaders of the terrorist organization DNR started to pressurize local internet providers. They sent letters out with threats demanding to block 27 Ukrainian and local news sites. So there's a policy of total censorship added to lies and defamation. Terrorists continue to destroy the infrastructure of Donbass. At the moment, we count 29 objects of air transport provision that are destroyed or damaged. 17 in Donetsk airport, 8 in Luhansk, also at the radio location complex in Artemivsk, 4. The forecast cost of the renewal of damaged and destroyed objects amounts to 700 million hryvnia. Also 962 kilometers of highways and over 30 bridges, total in the length of 3 kilometers, are damaged, and their approximate cost is 2 billion hryvnia. During the last week, the terrorists have destroyed the bridge, which costs approximately 22,000 hryvnia over the river Krinka in the village of Nizhna Krinka, and at the territories liberated from the terrorists, 12 teams of repairmen are working, including 21 vehicles and 56 workers. In 15 cities and districts of Donetsk Oblast region, the preparation of housing and communal service lags behind the schedule because of combat actions. 4,584 residential buildings have been destroyed. 42 boiler rooms are damaged, and the canal Siversky Donetsk Donbass has not renewed its work to the full capacity. The European Union notes that the conditions agreed in Minsk about the ceasefire in the east of Ukraine and the conditions of the peace plan have not been fulfilled to the full. So the recommendations to change the sanctions against Russia are absent. The spokeswoman for the Foreign Policy Service of EU, Maya Konstantin, said so. On the grounds of the evaluation assessment by the Foreign Service and Commission, the Committee of Permanent Representatives at the moment reviews the situation in the east of Ukraine fully. Co-Reaper does share the analysis in the part that at the moment when there were some hopeful events in the political process and in the realization of some aspects of Minsk Protocol, some parts of this protocol still have to be fulfilled. The representatives of EU member countries in the framework of the session of the Committee on Political Issues and Security Issues have agreed the concept of civil mission of EU advisors about the reforming of the sector of the civil defense in Ukraine. According to the concept, it is foreseen that the mission will help to develop the strategy of the reform of the civil security system that has to become a framework document while planning specific steps in this direction. It is also provided that the mission of EU will provide for the coordination and adjustment of actions with other representatives of EU in Ukraine. The spokesman for the State Department of the USA, spokeswoman Jen Psaki, said that from the moment of the introduction of the ceasefire regime on the 5th of September, the attacks on Ukrainian positions have not weakened, including the Donetsk airport and the city of Popasna in Luhansk region. She emphasized that Ukraine continues to fulfill the agreement on the ceasefire and does stick to the peaceful solution of the conflict. She also emphasized that it is time for the Russian authorities and separatists, which Russia supports, to immediately fulfill obligations according to the agreements in Minsk. Besides, the foreign minister of Ukraine said that IAEA has publicly revealed and condemned the attempts of Russia to use the mechanisms of the agency to unilaterally control the Ukrainian nuclear objects in Crimea. At the setting of the General Conference, the Ukrainian delegation emphasized the necessity of the continuation of applying IAEA guarantees to the entire nuclear material. The NATO representative Jay Janssen said that on the territory of Ukraine there are still hundreds of Russian military, including commandos. According to NATO data, close to the border of Ukraine, there's almost 20,000 soldiers of Russian armed forces. The Polish Senator Bogdan Klich said that about the preparedness to help Ukraine in raising its battle capacity. On the 19th of September, Ukrainian, Polish, and Lithuanian governments have signed the agreement to create a trilateral joint brigade, and it will involve 545 servicemen from the armed forces of Ukraine, and Canada has suspended the realization of the contract with Russia.
The governor of Donetsk region, Taruta, stated that there are negotiations going on about the exchange of the airport, Donetsk airport, to some territories of Donetsk region. Because the governor participates in the elections, we believe that that is one of the elements of political campaign. And I can say that the name Taruta, that there's no name Taruta among the leaders of anti-terrorist operation, and only the leadership of anti-terrorist operation can make a decision about the territories. I can say that the airport of Donetsk has always been and will be under the control of Ukrainian military, and the military servicemen from 2 brigades who are there at this airport, they are holding this place. These guys are heroes, and they have been shelled at by hundreds of tons of the missiles and shells, and the guys are still holding the airport. As I have mentioned, during the last 2 days, there's no single soldier killed or serviceman killed, and they are really very skillful in military actions. And we will hold the Donetsk airport until there is any other decision of the leadership of the ATO. That is in the memorandum signed in Minsk. So at the official level of military leadership, there are no negotiations. The negotiations about the exchange of the airport to some other territories, no. To continue, the DNR stated that they control 90% of the airport, and in the nearest days they will have it, they will seize it. I believe that was the report for the Kremlin. And could you please tell us how many military Ukrainian servicemen were killed from the beginning of the ATO and how many are missing. We cannot say the exact numbers because we are now trying to identify how many people were killed, how many are missing. And as soon as we have these figures, we will make them public. As to the ceasefire regime on the 5th of October, this will be exactly 1 month of this regime, and we'll provide all the data. Mr. Timchuk writes that the 76 division of Russian Federation is moved to Debaltseva, and also there are 7 dozen tanks of Russian Federation near Debaltseva. I've mentioned that near Debaltseva we observe the movement of the armored vehicles and strengthening of the forces. We do not know how many exactly, or if we know, we do not say that we have enough forces to stop them. It's difficult to say why the Russians came here. Maybe they got lost again. So the answer will be adequate, just the same as it was before. We have just received information that some shell hit the school and the public transportation bus. We don't have that information yet. Moskal says that 200 subversive force, 200 people who are subversive in the subversive forces. They came to Ukraine from Rostov Oblast. We do have the information about the movement of terrorist groupings. If they make an attempt to attack Ukrainian positions, we do not end with them, but you do not confirm, not yet. Any other questions? If you have no questions, I can add. That's adding to your question. The militants seized the Smerch system. There's some information that they seized the Smerch system. That fact does not correspond to reality. And the information which is disseminated by the representatives of so-called Donetsk People's Republic, we believe that's an attempt to legalize the weapons that they receive from Russian Federation. That's a very powerful weapon, not a single system which is in the Ukrainian armed forces was not seized by the terrorists. As soon as they start using it, it will be clear that that is what they receive from Russian Federation, and we do not exclude that the Russian armed forces will be using these systems, controlling. That wasn't seized. Do we see now any movement of heavy transportation, heavy vehicles and equipment across the border? We have the information that there are some trains coming to Rostov region and that some armored vehicles are coming to Debaltseva. We are observing, we are following it, and we are forecasting the events, and we redislocate our units respectively, looking at the map, the gray zone from the beginning of the ceasefire. Has it reduced or has it become bigger? The area isn't changed. The monitoring mission of OSCE is now working there. Every group has 6 representatives of Ukraine and the other side, and some people from OSCE. The started patrolling, and Ukrainian side is trying to draw attention to these observers to the zones where there are most shellings, so that they fix all the shellings. The joint report will be transferred to the OSCE headquarters and to the governments of Russia and Ukraine. Several more questions. Again, Тимчук, informacyjny sprotew, Tymczuk's resource rights, that Russian military are kidnapped by pro-Ukrainian partisans who walk around the city. What do you know about that? Is that really true? That's nothing new, because we regularly get information that, let's put it this way, pro-Ukrainian local citizens who were not affected by Russian propaganda. They do certain unpleasant things for terrorists. They blow off their artillery systems like Grad. And it's not just kidnapping, but we have the information about attacking the groups of Russian military and terrorists, but we do not have any evidence to give this as an official information, but we do have such type of information. These are not simple people, common people. These are patriots. And there's a question in English.
Yes, please. My name is Isabel Saco. I work for the Spanish news agency EFE. Could you tell us what is the situation on the exchange of prisoners which was agreed in the Minsk deal?
Обмін полоненими. Яка остання ситуація?
Thank you for question. Завдяки
Thanks to the initiative of the President of Ukraine to introduce the initiative on ceasefire as part of the peaceful plan. Every day there's this exchange of those who are detained by Ukrainian forces and those hostages who are kept by terrorists. And now there is a unique opportunity to exchange these people. And our task is to get all our people back, to have them back. And that is our main task, so that they go back to their families. But how this is happening, this is the mechanism where the security service of Ukraine is also involved into this mechanism. There's a special unit which negotiates with the militants. There are lists, and then on the neutral territory, they are exchanging these people, the prisoners.
Could you be precise on how many hostages that were held by a terrorist were already freed, and how many did you free on the prisoners of the other side?
Уточніть по кількості, будь ласка.
We have fixed freeing of more than 1,000 hostages. That means that these are not only servicemen, military, but also peaceful citizens who were kept hostage. They were freed. As to numbers of terrorists which we have, we do not give this information. Our main task is to get our people back. Any other questions? Once you have no more questions, thank you. The next press briefing will be tomorrow at 12:30, and our next press briefing is at 1:30 in half an hour. Rafat Chubarov.